When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject, T-14. User, DRR14X. Posted, April 11th, 1996.
My name is not important. Just call me R. I'm 38 years old, and I have a PhD in virology and cellular immunology from the University of Michigan. I was recruited by Veradigm Therapeutics in 1992 to work on a genetic treatment vector for terminal cancers, something we internally referred to as Project Orion. You won't find any mention of it on company documents, though. That was just what we called it on the whiteboards before the NDA meetings. The pitch was simple. A genetically modified retrovirus that could seek out tumor cells and repair faulty p53 gene expression, essentially turning on the cell's natural self-destruct function. Elegant stuff, really. We were using simian test subjects, macaques and rhesus monkeys, because of their immune system similarities to humans. Only that's not what it turned into. By 1994, we had what looked like a successful replication. Virus T-14, 14th iteration of our modified lentivirus, penetrated target cells, activated tumor suppression genes, and showed promising regression in our test monkeys, but there were behavioral anomalies we couldn't explain. Monkeys in the T-14 test group began exhibiting violent outbursts, far beyond normal defensive behavior. I'm talking about self-mutilation, cage slamming until they bled, and most disturbingly, attempts to consume living tissue from nearby animals. We first thought it was aggression toward other monkeys, but one of the assistants, let's call him Daniel, walked past the enclosure during a feeding cycle, and they reached through the bars, grabbed his forearm, and peeled the skin off like a banana. They ate him alive while he screamed. They were focused, relentless, like the concept of pain didn't register anymore. No panic, no territorial display even, just consumption. After that incident, our entire wing of the lab was shut down for 6 weeks. No one was allowed to discuss the T anomaly. Officially, Daniel's death was reported as unexpected exposure to simian pathogen resulting in lethal hemorrhagic fever. That's not what happened. We ran new EEGs and noticed the infected monkey's brainwaves were different, like a permanent state of REM intrusion, almost dreamlike patterns while fully awake. The hippocampus and amygdala were lit up constantly, and one showed spinal cord degradation consistent with extreme heat trauma, but there was no fever, no signs of thermal exposure. I know what you're thinking. It sounds like a horror movie, but I was there. I saw it. I helped sequence it. We tried heat mapping the virus's gene insertions and discovered something terrifying. T-14 wasn't just editing cancerous cells, it was replicating in non-dividing neurons, especially in the frontal lobe. It was rewriting cognition. The monkeys weren't just sick, they were being reprogrammed. I started raising concerns, especially after the behavioral incidents began spiking. I was told by my direct supervisor that this was acceptable noise in the research cycle. He used those words, acceptable noise. Then he said the company would be shifting trials to an underground facility off-site. Cleaner data, less oversight, he said. I didn't understand what he meant until we got on the shuttle. They moved us to Bunker 19, a decommissioned CDC safe house outside Gallup, New Mexico. No windows, lead-lined. 18 inches of reinforced concrete. Our IDs stopped saying Veridyne and started saying Lansdowne Logistics. I've looked. That company does not exist, and that's when I knew this was something else. We were told the move was to prepare for eventual FDA clinical trials, but we weren't working on cancer anymore. That was the lie they used to get us in the door. They started injecting T-14 into mammals outside of the primate family. Ferrets, dogs, pigs. In every case, the same thing happened: extreme behavioral dysregulation followed by attempted consumption of organic tissue. Some subjects died. Others, especially the pigs, didn't. They just stopped being pigs. Their eyes turned gray and glossy. Their vocalizations got lower, longer, like they were trying to speak. And I'm not kidding. I still have the tape. One of them said no, over and over again. It didn't sound like a pig. It sounded like a man trapped in a throat that didn't fit him anymore. At that point, I began keeping a private log. I also started copying data onto floppy disks and mailing them to my sister in Chicago, labeling them as old school assignments. If they're reading this now, if anyone has found this post, I'm sorry. I was scared. But then last week, one of the techs accidentally got bitten. He wasn't even in the testing room, just retrieving waste bins, and got a scratch on the wrist. He was, well, let's just say he was different within 24 hours. He stopped blinking, started pacing in patterns, perfect circles for hours on end. He stopped speaking on day 2. On day 3, he attacked the security guard and nearly bit through the man's throat before we sedated him. Now, no one here is saying zombie. Not out loud, but that's what it is, right? A biological agent that induces deathless aggression, cognitive collapse, and flesh consumption? What else do you call it? They've reassigned the infected tech to another location. I'm not sure where. They burned all the bedding and disinfected everything with formaldehyde and gas, but I saw the notes. The viral load was undetectable in his blood after 72 hours. Undetectable, which means the virus learned to hide. I don't know how far this has spread. I don't know how much Veridyne has told the government or how far this goes up, but I do know we're not curing cancer anymore. We're making something else, and it's alive, and it wants out. If you're reading this, you have a way to leak information to a journalist or a congressman or, hell, even Coast to Coast AM, then please, I don't care what happens to me. I can't sleep anymore. I wake up every night thinking I hear something breathing through the vent, and I'm still down here in Bunker 19, and the monkeys, they never stopped screaming.
Subject, in the corners. User, CX22-1. Posted, February 17th, 1997.
We moved in right before Halloween, but not on purpose. That's just when the closing date fell. I remember that first night like it was yesterday. Still had boxes all over the living room. Hadn't found the coffee maker yet, and here come the neighborhood kids ringing the doorbell in full costume. My wife had dug through a Tupperware container and handed out some half-melted mini Snickers, and we hadn't even unpacked the dishes yet. It wasn't a spooky place, not at first, just one of those brick ranch-style homes you see by the dozen out in the older parts of town. Big carport, brown carpet, wood paneling in the den. Backyard had a chain-link fence and a pecan tree, which we thought was real nice. The man who owned it before us had lived there nearly 30 years, according to his daughter. She said he kept it up real good until his health started going. From what I could tell, she was right. We got it for a steal. The first week passed without much. Jake, our boy, said he didn't like the basement, but what kid does? Low ceiling, concrete floor, cold even when the rest of the house was warm. Had that faint smell of dirt and wet wood. I just figured I'd get used to it. Kids are funny like that. But then things started going sideways. Little stuff at first, flickering lights, doors creaking, the usual things folks chalk up to settling wood and old copper wire. I'd hear footsteps in another room when nobody was there, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to spook anyone, and my wife would just glance up from her book when it happened, like she heard it too, but wasn't ready to say it out loud. I remember the first time she finally did speak up, though. She was reading in bed one night, and the closet door swung open by itself. Nothing dramatic, just a slow creak like it had come loose and decided to breathe a little. She said I was already asleep, and she got up and closed it. Didn't think much of it till the next day, and that's when she told me. From there, well, it just kept building. The stereo in the den turned itself on twice, and same song both times. One of those soft instrumental things, something you'd hear in a dentist's waiting room. The drawers in the kitchen would be open when we came in the morning, and nothing ever was taken, just open, like somebody had been looking for something. Then the shadows came. I was the first to see them, or at least admit it. Late at night, I was standing in the kitchen barefoot, drinking water straight from the jug like a tired fool, and that's when I noticed a figure standing in the corner by the fridge, still as stone. Human-shaped, but just the outline. No features, no light, just black where there shouldn't be black. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't tell anyone that night. Figured I was just tired or seeing things. But a couple days later, my wife came out of the bathroom white as a sheet, asked if I'd just walked past her in the hallway. I hadn't left the couch. That's when she started saying it felt like the shadows weren't just moving. They were watching. Jake stopped sleeping through the night. said there was a tall one in his doorway, just standing there. Wouldn't come in, wouldn't speak, just would watch him. He also said there were some that crawled on the ceiling, but he didn't like to talk about those. I tried to calm him down, tell him it was just dreams, that the house was new and strange and he'd get used to it, but look, kids know better. They always do. Eventually, we were freaked out enough to bring in a priest, even though we're definitely not church folks. Just figured it couldn't hurt. He walked through the place with his holy water and said some prayers, but I could tell he didn't feel anything. He gave us a small cross and told us to keep it over the front door. I nailed it up before he'd even pulled out of the driveway. That didn't change a damn thing. One night, every light in the house turned on at the same time, 3:17 in the morning. I remember because I looked at the clock as soon as I sat up. The bedroom light, the hall light, lamps that weren't even plugged in the day before, everything blazing. I thought maybe it was a surge, but I checked the breakers and nothing had flipped. That night, we slept with the light in the hallway on. We didn't say it out loud, but none of us wanted to be in the dark. The last big moment happened not long after. Something woke me up. A noise, not loud, just enough. When I rolled over, I saw my wife staring up at the ceiling. Her eyes were wide, and she looked like she hadn't blinked in a while. I asked what was wrong. She whispered, "Don't move." That's never what you want to hear lying in bed at 2 in the morning. I turned my heat just enough to see what she was looking at. In the corner, near the ceiling vent, something hung there. It wasn't moving, it wasn't floating, sitting up in that corner like it belonged there. A shadow black as pitch, like smoke that had forgotten which way was up. My chest got tight and I couldn't take a full breath. It felt like the air in the room had thickened, and then it was gone. Not all at once, mind you. It slid back into the corner like a piece of it had been peeled away. I couldn't explain it then, and I can't now. We sat in silence for a long time after that, just listening to those walls. Jake didn't scream that night. He was asleep when we checked on him, curled up like a cat, one arm under his pillow, breathing soft. After that, something changed. The house didn't get better exactly, but it got quieter. The shadows didn't go away. We still saw them sometimes and still heard the whispers, but they didn't try to scare us anymore. It was more like they were waiting to see how we'd behave, like they were living there too and didn't want to fight either. We even started talking to them. Not much, just little things. All right, you had your fun, or that's enough now. The other night at parent-teacher conferences, Jake's teacher told us that recently he drew a picture in art class of the house with little black stick figures in the window, and when she asked him who they were, he told her, "They're just part of it."
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast before the server goes offline.